All right, I'll probably ask everybody to mute right now. I think the first year that we did this annual meeting, someone was making their lunch, and so it was a little distracting. Don't want to relive that again. All right, it's 1:02. I'll get going. Thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I hope Nicholas, one of our board members, this is a picture of he and his grandpa at the farm. So hopefully he's on this call. This is one of my favorite pictures. So I'll get going, and I have our mission and our purpose up here on the page, and you all can have the opportunity to read through it if you want. But I'll give you a quick background about our organization. A lot of members might not even be aware of how and why we started, but we really started in March of 2020 when a lot of independent food and beverage businesses were uncertain how they were going to navigate their businesses through a pandemic, if they were going to lose their businesses, how they were going to operate. And at that point, a lot of independent food and beverage businesses had gotten together and realized at that point that there was no trade association that really represented their interests, which was independent food and beverage businesses. So that's how we were born. However, we decided to structure the organization a little differently than most. And we kind of joke that we don't know if there's another trade association structured like ours out there in the galaxy. Which can be a blessing and a bit of a curse, because you're looking for a model, right, for another organization to kind of give the guiding light of how you should structure your own. But we've also found it to be a blessing because we can think outside of the box and really be agile and really build the organization that we think fills the needs of our state. So FAIR stands for Food, Agriculture, Restaurants, and Establishments. And we decided that we wanted to really support our food system, or food and beverage system here in Idaho. So we represent farmers, ranchers, small farmers, ranchers, independent restaurants, food and beverage producers. So all the way from a winery to a salsa maker, independent bars, and then also retailers, really being our farmers markets and our independent retailers. So what we do as an organization is we advocate on behalf of our members, and a lot of our members actually are the driving force for our advocacy efforts. They come to us and then we respond. And so, never hesitate to reach out. And a lot of the items that we're working on, whether it be legislation that we've crafted, it can take a couple years, or there can be really easy, approachable ways to help in terms of advocacy. And then we connect Idaho producers with Idaho retailers. This is why the why behind the structure of our organization, because my background is really working with over 90 producers throughout Idaho. We had a cooperative, and unfortunately it always ran in the red and never in the black. And so it disbanded. But what we realized when we crafted this organization is that a lot of those issues were still very much present for smaller producers, and that we needed to help. And we thought we could do it more effectively, treating it as a food system. And another one of our goals is really tell the stories. So like McIntyre Farms here, we want to tell the stories of our members so that people are encouraged to source local product, to stop by a new restaurant and really get to know the people behind their food system. I think I read a really sad statistic recently about only 10% of people know their producers, their food and beverage producers. And so we hope to change that really through the art of storytelling. And then one of the other things that I think has been a really critical pillar, but wasn't initially thought about, is that we wanted to build community around our organization. I remember stepping into this role, and a lot of people would say, oh, they represent a different type of ag, or they represent a different type of restaurant. But I think that myself and the board realized that we had to really work to build community, to meet in the Radical Food Center and create that positive change for the entire industry. And I think for me, that has been some of the most rewarding work, and really got us to over 300 members, and where we are is that community. So I'm looking back at reflections, and the first really year and a half of our existence was working to help restaurants, bars, food trucks, and caterers working and partnering with the Independent Restaurant Coalition to pass the $28.6 billion grant. I mention this because it was really challenging, I think, for me stepping into this role and not feeling like it was necessarily fair, that we weren't spending enough time on all these other sectors that we represented. And a farmer had wisely told me that, Katie, you'll be there when we need you. And if those restaurants don't make it, we don't make it. And so that's a statement that really brought home that we need to treat it as a system, and we can be more effective when we treat it as a system. So we launched our membership in August of 2020. We were really created in March of 2020, but our membership launched in August of 2020. We've grown to over 300 members. I think we have 315 members and industry partners across Idaho. Some of the membership benefits we added was the nice healthcare. This is personally one of my favorites, just because it's costs $28 per employee per month. We have 2 nurse practitioners here in the Treasure Valley. We're trying to get more across the state that make house calls to Fair Idaho members and their employees. They will come to your house and treat the whole family at once. It's all included in that $28 per month with 500 prescriptions, x-rays, etc. So it really addresses sort of that primary care needs. We also work with very closely with an accountant to help on employee retention tax credit eligibility. And she also does free form filing for farmers, ranchers, and livestock processors. This has gotten our members thousands of dollars of tax credits back in their time of need with the pandemic and the aftershocks of the pandemic. And we'll be hosting a roundtable here shortly to do another ERTC webinar just to educate people. I do want to do a quick note that there's been a lot of pop-up businesses that unfortunately are taking advantage of businesses like the type of members that we have, that are charging sometimes 20 to 30% of tax returns. So please don't go with someone that charges that much, and reach out to us at hello@fairidaho.org, and I'll make sure to put that email address in the chat. And then we are currently working, it was kind of put on the back burner because of this large event we just hosted, but we're currently working on negotiating for lower health and dental insurance premiums as a trade association. This is a relatively new sort of concept that we can go in as a collective with. We just need 1,000 lives on that census data. We go in and we can negotiate for all of our members. We've received a lot of reports that health and dental insurance is increasing pretty dramatically, sometimes upwards of 40% from the year prior. And so our goal is really to help save costs and help our employers retain their staff. And so we're only 186 away from that 1,000 lives. And we really just need a first name, last name, date of birth, and zip code to be put on that census. And it doesn't mean you have to sign up for the health insurance, but you can sure see if it would make more sense to get the insurance as a collective. And we're hoping to not only lower premiums for everybody that's a fair member, but also get better benefits. In terms of our advocacy work, some of this we'll be covering with our chairs. So I'll briefly cover this. We did hire Roger Batt, our public affairs advisor, our lobbyist, to represent FAIR on a state policy. But we continue to partner with the Independent Restaurant Coalition. We're actually the Idaho delegate to the IRC on national policy. And this could be the Farm Bill. This could be Farm Worker Modernization Act, service fees. So the list goes on, and we're really excited to partner with them so that we have an opportunity to give our input on a national level. And there's some little things that came up this year that were just, like preserving farmland in Canyon County. I wouldn't actually call it little, but, things in terms of advocacy work where we can hopefully jump in and lend our voice, because we have members in the Sunny Slope area that were in support of the 2030 comprehensive plan in Canyon County to save farmland in Sunny Slope. And then the historical liquor license legislation, which we've been working on 2 years, and Dave will cover that in a minute. Partnered with the Regenerate America to advocate for the 2023 Farm Bill, which Amy will cover in just a few minutes. And then livestock processing took up a big chunk of our year in farm and ag. And I think that when we decide that we're going to advocate on behalf of something, it really is a multi-pronged approach. So this is a great example where livestock processing is a huge issue for a lot of our smaller producers where they can't get processing dates. There's really a limitation in terms of workforce in this area. And so we were awarded a $58,000 grant to host classes around the state, which was super cool. I'll show you pictures in a bit, but the thought process is like, how can we highlight smaller producers, highlight local restaurants and local chefs, create video resources that would be available on our website. And, you know, I've talked with many restaurant owners that were like, the cost of, like, let's say chicken, for example, was super expensive, and still is. And if they break down the animal or the carcass in-house, then they're able to save money. We also partnered and chatted with some universities in terms of workforce development. So it was just this really great opportunity to not only host roundtables, to meet with our members and say, okay, are we going this direction? Are we talking, you know, state inspection program, but also like, how do we address this from multiple angles to find a solution? Some of the highlights is we did launch Project Fair, our 501c3. We really wanted to create a journalistic firewall between Fair Idaho and Project Fair. So Project Fair just kind of had an editor and ran some stories. Ultimately, we decided that Fair Idaho was such a big beast and was moving forward at such a rapid pace that we needed to sort of focus. And me, for example, I just decided like I have to focus on Fair. So Project Fair is sort of in the back burner, but it has some great articles if you want to check those out. They did a phenomenal job and the website's beautiful. And then we were awarded the specialty crop grant. So thinking through like our connection piece, and my background with that cooperative is like, how do we make sourcing local easier? That seems to be one of the biggest hurdles. And so we have launched an online field to fork exchange. And this allows basically local producers to list their product, allows a chef, let's say, that wants to source local but doesn't have the time to figure out where to source local, to order from 10 farms to see what days those producers will deliver to the restaurant. And then you can pay the invoice direct to the producer on the website. So that was one way we wanted to tackle the problem. And we thought it would also give an opportunity for more producers to get their products seen, and more restaurants, retailers, chefs to be able to see those products. And then we have a newsletter that goes out every 2 weeks. This is a great opportunity to stay abreast of what Fair Idaho is working on. We have an average open rate of 40%. It's actually probably about 2,400 subscribers now. And this just gives like a 2-week snapshot of what we're working on, our cool things that are happening, like the Harvest and Hearth conference that's coming up next week. And then we featured over 25 stories of Fair Idaho members and some awesome photographs that you'll be able to see throughout the slideshow presentation. So this is some photos from our Learn Art of Butchery series. This was great. We did one at Bitter Creek with some chefs and did hog, rabbit, goat. I'm trying to remember. It seems like months ago, which it was, but we also did one in Caldwell with salmon, trout, offals, with meal preparation, which was totally different from the one before. And then we went to the University of Idaho with Dr. Phil Bass, Vandal Meats, and broke down beef, and then lamb and chicken at the Sun Valley Culinary Institute. So, and then the Field to Fork Festival, we just had this on the 19th. This was a first year event. And we you know, to be honest, this has been a thought process in both myself and Rocky's brain. Rocky was, you know, adamant we needed to do an event. And so I'm so glad that she kept that torch aflame. And we had the Field to Fork Festival with networking, chef-led classes, and panel discussions. The highlights were really that the panel discussions were standing room only. I had someone ask me about, how did you get so many people to go to a panel discussion? That's really hard to do at an event. And I was thinking through it, and I was realizing that people care about the subject matter. That's why they're showing up, right? And that's really important. The classes had local chefs. They were full as well. And really the sense of community. I mean, it's been the pandemic and we haven't really been able to get together. So it's time to come together and really celebrate. And I think you build that community. It's hard to do it via Zoom or one-on-one. Like, let's just all come together and celebrate Idaho food and beverage. We saw a lot of connections being built during the event, between ranchers and livestock processors, or a farmer and an everyday consumer. And so we were really excited about that. That was our goal. And so even through the snow, I think we had over 650 attendees. It was a bad snowstorm that morning, unfortunately. We sold out of booth space pretty early on. We had over 25 legislators attend the celebration party, which was great because that's, with our advocacy work, we're down at the Capitol building quite a bit. And I think we decided unanimously that this now has to be an annual event. So I think people really gravitated towards being able to meet the producers that are an integral part of our food system. And here's some pictures. I just wanted to show these really quickly from some of our chef-led classes and just people engaging about their products. And then our 2023 goals. So we're still committed, obviously, to building a more resilient food system. It's like the first year and a half of our existence was really focused on helping everybody, those businesses, get through the pandemic. Still is, actually, that's still something we need to focus on. And our belief, is that we are stronger together. So we will be coming out with the Field to Fork dates, returning in late 2023 or early 2024. We'll continue our storytelling and really uniting Idaho producers and Idaho retailers. We're always game for new ideas, so don't hesitate to reach out. And my goal is to have more regional events. How can we bring farmers together at a regional level, and our restaurants or all these like-minded businesses? Because I think, it became apparent when the pandemic hit that a lot of these businesses weren't sure how to navigate because they had worked independently, right? They just done their thing. And now all of a sudden, I think that we realize that there's such a benefit to coming together and sharing ideas, hurdles, and just what works for the businesses and the farmers and that kind of thing. We've applied for a couple pretty significant grants. So, I was thinking through our strategy sessions coming up here shortly as a board. And I think, we definitely know where we're going to go into 2023, but you never know what new opportunities will be present for our organization. And there's a blessing for, the way our organization is structured. It's really been beneficial. And I've already seen some of that come to fruition, but there's grant opportunities that you never know if you're going to get a grant, but there's a potential to start thinking through, like, how can we help these businesses even more? So stay tuned on that. And then we'll continue to be change makers. Some of the issues plaguing our industries and really Idaho agriculture, farmland protection, licensed beverage, livestock processing. There's going to be other things that come up. We're pretty agile in that way, just because we like to jump in and help out. The one thing I noticed when we were, first starting out with Fair Idaho, and we only had 35 members, and we try to call our representatives, our voices weren't necessarily loud enough. Now that we have over 300 members, that's the benefit of coming together, is that we actually have our voices heard. And that's what our representatives repeat back to us, is the number of members that we have. And then really to provide relief for, we had the pandemic, but then we have the pandemic aftershocks, right? So supply chain disruptions, wage increases, labor shortage, the list goes on. So we'll still be working on that. Sorry, my throat's dry. Health insurance will be a big thing that I'll be working on. And and then just continue to build bridges. You know, we're constantly engaging at a state level with these wonderful organizations that are helping us be stronger and make these changes, but also on a regional level and truly work to be a force of good. That's our focus in 2023. Sorry, my screen's not changing. So I want to thank everyone for being here. I'm going to do a quick next steps on our meeting. So we'll have Dave Crick, our public affairs chair, and our board president will speak about what we're working on in public affairs. Amy will cover farm and ag. Rocky will cover the event. Chad is our treasurer, so he'll cover just the year in review, and then we'll allow time for questions at the end. So thanks so much, everyone. Dave, you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Katie. And I want to start by just thanking Katie for those of us from the board, and I would hope our extended membership. We just appreciate the terrific leadership that Katie provides this organization. She's just done a great job in so many ways. I think she cares deeply about our industry, and it's evidenced in just the work that she does, both to make sure that this organization is financially secure, and I think that the work that we do is impactful. So thank you, Katie. We're in good hands. So on the public policy side, I'm going to focus on licensed beverage issues. Amy Matias, I'll let her talk about what's going on with farm and ag because she knows that policy better than me. For most of the focus in the state legislature right now, it's on this year, the licensed beverage, specifically the liquor quota system. We've worked now for many years on trying to find a center lane that helps our industry both support the market values that we have for licenses for people who are invested in liquor licenses, not disrupting those markets, but also finding ways to make it easier for people to either acquire licenses or be able to be in the game. And it's tough because, you know, there's sort of two extreme forces on this subject. One, which, you know, wants absolutely no change to the system, and the other side, which wants massive change and wants rid of the quota system. And it has been really difficult to navigate this particular lane. Our effort, after spending a lot of time talking to a lot of different people last year, we kind of centered on a bill that we call the historic license bill, which allows for a historic non-transferable license for a business that has been invested in the liquor license system and has had a quota system in place and has had their business in place for 25 years. This year, we've also added to that particular bill at the issuance of that, the quota license that business has, they can then transfer, which means sell it. And once that happens, that license, after it's been transferred one time, becomes non-transferable. In addition to that, we are proposing that any new licenses issued to the market are non-transferable. This was a consensus idea amongst people who don't like many ideas at all. They tend to like this one because it tends to get the goal is to get speculators out of the business, to get people who are buying these just as a financial investment and leasing them out to other people. So if we can end the ability for these things to be transferred, at least new licenses, the existing licenses would stay transferable. It begins to change the system slowly over time. It's tough, though. I think as we've worked in the legislature this year on this issue, there have been several proposals that have come through the Senate side. The Senate in particular, the Senate State Affairs Committee in particular, has a new chair who is very interested in bigger change. They don't want to see this issue come up again at the legislature and would like to see bigger change. Two particular ideas that we've seen. One was to lower the quota from 1,500 to 1,000 per license. And the most recent one is just an elimination of the quota system altogether. And we're just seeing today an RS on that particular idea that's coming out of the Senate. So we're trying to figure out where that's going. I think that the House has definitely been more resistant to ideas like this, which is why our historic license bill has been a better approach, we think, because we think it's a more consensus-based approach. But we'll see. We don't know what the outcome is going to be this year. It is an interesting legislative session with a lot of new members, a lot of new chairs, new focus on leadership, both in the House and the Senate. And so it's a wild card. In addition to license, or in addition to liquor quota license issues that we want to work on, but we put on the back burner just because we don't have consensus around how to approach them, but we know that we want to work on them going forward. One is a shared space proposal for places that are wanting to share retail space for guests that have different businesses. There is no provision in the code that allows those guests to basically share, like for example, a shared beer garden, which we have one in Boise up on the bench. And we think that they should be able to do that. And alcohol beverage control likes the idea as well. It's just been tricky to craft that. And so we're studying other states and how they've done it and trying to build some consensus around how ABC might be able to administer that. I think there's support for it. So I think that's something we can get done next year, but it doesn't look like we're going to have enough time to get it done this year. There's also interest in a couple of brewery pieces. And so we're working with our terrific partners at Idaho Brewers United to help craft some of those. One that I know is a high priority for them is looking at the number of extra retail establishments, tap rooms that wineries and breweries can have. That is definitely one where there's a lot of interest right now. Breweries in particular are limited, I think wineries as well, are limited to just one extra tap room. And I think from a competitive standpoint, that really limits their ability to be viable, especially when they're competing against so many national brands in the same space. So I think having those tap rooms is really important. So we're supportive of that and hopeful that IBU sort of finds some policy language that everybody likes around that. We're also interested in, this idea that small breweries can direct ship to consumers. That is complicated by both an administrative ability to track and enforce it, and I think it opens the door to out-of-state breweries being able to sell direct to consumers in our state, which I think is potentially a detriment. So I think that, again, we kind of look at IBU and are looking for their leadership in that particular area, but we know we have a few members that are interested in that. And let's see, I can't think. I think there was a couple of other things, but anyway, that's my sort of summary of, I think, the legislative efforts I can think of we've been working on. And if there's questions at the end, we'll take those. And that's it. I'm going to pass it on, Katie. Thank you.
All right, Amy, are you ready to chat? Yeah. Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to just reiterate what Dave said about Katie's leadership. And I think I can speak on behalf of the whole Farm and Ag Committee and say we really appreciate Katie's advocacy for our work and for hosting the Fields of Fork event. It was a great opportunity for many of our agricultural producers to get in front of buyers and consumers throughout Idaho. So such an incredible event, and looking forward to the next one already. Just a couple of quick updates about what we've done over the last year and what we're looking at in the upcoming year. So as Katie mentioned, we did a lot of roundtables and engagement related to livestock processing. We did not get to a place where we could actively advocate a bill that would bring state processing into Idaho, but we're still looking at that opportunity for future sessions. We know that workforce development has been a big hindrance to small and mid-scale processors across the state. So we had been having some conversations with our universities and colleges throughout Idaho to see how Fair Idaho could support that. Still waiting to really understand what our opportunity is there, but we're actively involved in those conversations. The big thing that happened on a federal level for us in 2022 was that we signed on to a grassroots movement called Regenerate America. So for those of you who are familiar, and for those of you who are new to this space, every 5 years, Congress tries to pass an updated farm bill. So 2023 is the newest farm bill, and there's been a big push by a large nonprofit organization with an extremely long list of coalition members that FAIR is now a coalition member of, is to integrate regenerative agriculture practices to various titles in the farm bill. So there's a lot of advocacy that will happen with that. If you read the FAIR Idaho newsletter, I think it came out this morning, there's a petition going around right now to just show how many people are supportive of this movement to bring more regenerative practices into the farm bill. So be on the lookout for that and feel free to sign the petition. There'll be a handful of other media activities and events throughout the year to really raise awareness and to promote this movement at a federal level. At a state level and a federal level, we're in a new legislative session. So we're seeing a lot of new bills be introduced. So we're actively watching the bill trackers just to see what types of bills are being introduced that are directly aligned with FAIR's work and FAIR's membership base, or potentially at odds with our membership base. So currently in the Idaho legislation, we see both a reintroduced bill to nix the grocery tax. So we're looking through that right now and just assessing if this is something that we'd want to advocate for. And then the other one that was just introduced, I think yesterday, was raw milk legislation. And we're reading through that to see what it actually gets at in the introduced bill. And then one other ones that we know are coming down the pipeline per conversations that were had at the Fields of Fork event is a food freedom bill that would try to do some level of reducing regulations for cottage food and other small scale food producers out of home or commercial kitchens. So we'll wait to see what that the bill text looks like before making any policy statements about it. And then internally, one thing that the Farm and Agriculture Committee are actively discussing is across smaller municipalities and counties, we're seeing a lot of pushback on the right to farm, whether it's encroaching development pressures, new people moving into the communities that aren't familiar with agriculture and don't like what they see or what they smell, what they hear, signs up, promotion of agritourism. So we're looking at ways that we could quickly move on supporting those types of agricultural businesses by having a policy stance in place that we're supportive of any type of agricultural business that meets X, Y, and Z requirements. So we're not coming out publicly with that yet, but those are internal conversations that we're having. And I would just invite anyone on the call today who's interested in participating in these conversations and helping FAIR get firmer in our policy stances related to municipal, state, and federal level of agricultural policies. Please let me know. We're always welcoming new members to our committee. So if that's of interest to you, we'd happily have you join. So that is it from me. And I think I'll pass it over to Rocky.
Well, thank you. Katie, did you have anything you wanted to talk about as far as reference to Amy's?
No, I think she covered it all. Thanks, Amy.
Okay, great. And I want to reiterate what Dave and Amy said about Katie. Thank you for your tremendous leadership and for being the driving force, making us all get together and do what we need to do. For those of you who were able to attend the Field of Fork Festival, it was a remarkable event, especially considering it was our inaugural Field of Fork Festival, and we achieved our purpose, which was getting the community to come together and connecting people, producers to what the food supply chain all the way down, and getting it to our glasses and our plates. And I think that going forward, there's a couple things we're we have sent out a survey. So if you've seen that survey, please do respond if you have not done so already. If anything, this will begin to become not just an annual event, but a bigger and more well-rounded event. I feel that there's a lot of things we can do, but for the first annual event, and especially with the snowstorm, it was great. It turned out great. Attendance was great. Participation was terrific. There were some limitations as far as booth space, because we could have probably added easily another 40 booths, but there was table issues as far as what Jump had available for us to use. We're meeting with them on Friday to figure out next year's event, and also trying to assess the best timing for the year. We had looked at November in our prior dates that had to be canceled, and November is okay, but a lot of the farmers and ranchers who were in attendance felt like January is really seriously a downtime for them. Although it does not allow for fresh produce, freshly grown Idaho produce to be present. So we're just going to be taking a look at timing, and also not just for time of year, but for the time of day. A lot of the farmers and ranchers and producers felt like they have to take care of their animals and everything to do with their farming and ranching in the morning, and they'd like to have the ability to do that and then get to the event. So we'd probably be later in the day, and especially let the booths continue to where we can get more foot traffic, people getting off work and that type of thing. So if you've seen the survey, and if you maybe, I don't know, Katie, if you could put the link in the chat, that'd be great, just in
I
case you
did.
haven't received the survey. We do want to look toward hosting regional events, but it's going to be a matter of leadership in different sectors of Idaho coming forward and saying, hey, we'd like to clone Field to Fork and host it in northern Idaho or in any other region of the state. But it would be a matter of making sure that we've got the volunteer base in place and that type of thing. So we will be restarting our events committee now that the Field to Fork Festival is done. And those of you who are interested in expanding our events across the state, we'd love to have you on board. I do want to mention that Carly May was a terrific hire. She worked her little tail off, and so did Katie. And so I just want to acknowledge that Carly May was a terrific asset as far as pulling off the details and making sure the T's were crossed and the I's dotted. The panel discussions, as Katie mentioned, were a big hit with standing room only, and Sheffler classes were great. We probably will augment those and expand on the panel discussions as per public interest and industry interest. So any ideas you have, we're open to listen to them, and please do fill out the survey and let us know what it is we can do better. But for our first annual event, we thought it was terrific. So I pass it off to Katie and or Chad.
Chad, I'll pull up the numbers.
Okay, thank you, Katie. I too would like to extend a thank you to all of the board members of FAIR, and certainly want to say thank you to Katie for running the economics behind what we presented today, the results of 2022. Although the event was 2023, but it was budgeted in 2022. So hopefully everybody can see this. It's kind of an eye chart. I'm going to kind of skim through, talk about some of the highlights. Being a first year event, it is rather difficult to make intelligent budgeting numbers for what we have yet to ever accomplish. So if you look through, we'll start with the revenue side, and you can see that the event, we did budget it for 2022, although some of the expenses and some of the revenue is going to be recognized in 2023. We took what was reported And again, what's been booked is a little bit different than what's been reported because the event was changed to 2023. But rolling through, we recognized $20,000 worth of revenue from the event. We did budget 96,000, which again was an intelligent estimation. And going into the second year, I think we're going to be a lot better with some of these budgeted numbers. Next item is the ERTC, the Employee Retention Tax Credit. We recognized $48,000 from that program. I think we budgeted just one of the quarters. We got all eligible quarters in 2022. So on the grant side, USDA grant, you can see that of that, there's 2 grants actually in that bucket, and we still have some grant money that is going to be recognized in 2023. So the difference is we knew the grant amount, but we didn't actually recognize that all in 2022. That's why the miss of $14,000. Membership came in extremely strong. You can see between business, individual, and other, we came in at $89,000 as opposed to what we had budgeted, $72,000. I think Katie highlighted it best. We're growing and we're seeing that side of our business continue to advance. So very positive. And again, a big thank you to all those contributing members that have helped attract and get additional members. Sponsorship, we did miss in this area. We recognized 18,000. I know we have some additional dollars out there that we haven't recorded. So this is dollars that we've actually taken to the bank. So there are some additional dollars we'll recognize once we receive those funds. On the total income side, we recognized 221,000 of 328,000. Again, largely due to the event. That was $75,000. I think this next year you'll see that will be much closer now that we've held the event. We recognize both what the revenue opportunity is and what expenses are associated with that revenue opportunity. Rolling down through our operating expenses, obviously the first one there is the event, $11,000 that we've actually recognized. Again, there will be some additional expenses that associated with the event in January of 2023. When you look at our contract services, this area we certainly improved to budget with a total of 72,000 over a budgeted 96,000. Sorry, it's hard for me to see this and I don't want to look down, but this area we certainly have managed exceptionally well. Part of that on the outside services, we do have and had budgeted for some grant money and had spent some grant money associated with that. That's why it was so high this past year. And even in this year, I think we did take it down a little bit, but we're able to do so because we realized what expenses were associated with some of those activities that were associated with our mission and vision, quite frankly. So rolling down a little bit further to the operation side, you can see that here we certainly did better than budgeted. Most of the expenses were budgeted from 2021 that we knew about and did very accurately. Some were underspent, and I think that when you estimate expenses, you're always better to have it be better than what you budgeted. That's the goal, at least two budgets. So rolling down a little bit further to all the other types of expenses that we had, other types of expenses, our software, our advertising, grant supplies. This was something that we expected to recover, and part of that is in the revenue stream up above. Again, we outperformed by $5,000. Our payroll expenses, this does look a little bit off. The only reason that it does is because under the payroll expenses, how it's charted, it has taxes included in there. So you'll see that we didn't miss by much on this. We did have some limits that we reached on SUDA taxes and some of the other that had limits. So that was why we outperformed in that particular area. On the last expense line, we did plan for a little bit more travel than we expensed in actuality, and outperformed that category by $7,000. I have to say, missing revenue by $100,000, and when you come to the pre-tax net profit of $39,000 versus a $50,000 or $60,000 budgeted, we certainly improved exceptionally well in the expense management side of it. And I didn't put this on here, but our bank balance as of today is $86,980. So we are a very stable and viable organization. And that is, again, thanks to Katie mostly, but the rest of the board as well that contribute to that success. Any questions on the budget to actual? Okay, I'll hand it back over to Katie. Thank you.
All right, does anyone have any questions for us? You can put them in the chat. You can raise your hand.
Great news, Katie. Chad, I'm all smiles right now. So well done.
Good.
I
Thanks,
still
George.
remember when we were like, when Dave was like, I think we might be up to 10,000 in the bank right now. So yeah, that's great. That's great news.
We've come a long ways.
We missed you, Chad.
Yeah, I'm very sorry I missed it. I truly am. It just was pre-planned before the scheduling change, and I hated to miss it. I won't miss it this next year, I promise you.
Oh man, it was amazing. I mean, I was so impressed.
All right, well, any questions? Give it about 15 more seconds so it doesn't get too awkward. Well, I want to say thanks everyone for joining us today. It's been a wild ride, and truly it's because of you all that we've gotten to where we are. And I think this next year, this next 5 years is going to be extremely exciting to see what we can accomplish. And we definitely need to do it together. And thanks for being a part of this organization. We really appreciate it. All right, I'm going to close the meeting. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.